right now, so
All right, we're probably live now. All right.
cool.
What's up, Johnny?
Not a whole lot today. Well, I had coffee with my mentor this morning, and that's
Awesome.
about it. Hell yeah.
So I'm not familiar with your coverage about Christian at all, but someone told me that you talk about him a lot, and I'm currently in the midst of a Christian project, so I figured I should talk to you. Um,
Oh, well, that's cool.
what kind of things do you know? So I have a lot of like, guilt around the topic of Christian. But I think
Mm-hmm.
Christian's an incredibly important topic, like sociologically, and I think like the fact that Christian is probably hands down the most documented person in human history is something like incredibly of note, right? Like
Yes,
it should
absolutely.
absolutely like this is not like just some random thing. But I feel really guilty talking about it because it adds to it, and I think it's a
Mm-hmm.
problem. Yeah, but I think I think like we should learn from this story. I think.
Absolutely. So I had actually an entire panel on lol cows in general. Are you familiar with the term lol cow?
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah, it's pretty derogatory, but it's probably the best current nomenclature that we have that everybody's
Mm-hmm.
familiar with. I had an entire lolcow panel where I discussed that very thing. This idea that I am also a little bit guilty of watching people and therefore feeding their fame and their lolcow status. And I had a few
Yeah.
other people on, some who were familiar with Holocaust, some who weren't. And we didn't stay on Christian for very long on that particular one, but I have been aware of Christian since about 2012, and I've checked in on them on and off.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just to get it out of the way, there's a whole thing about Chris and pronouns. I generally just use they them pronouns, Chris.
Yeah.
I don't really care what other people do.
I'm considering having a conversation with someone about that, but yeah, that's a good thing to get out of the way. Out of the way. I tend to use he him, but just out of like familiarity, and I don't really care too much. I mean, in the context of a conversation of that conversation, I might care, but like I don't really care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm one of those assholes. If you like, I have a channel in my Discord that you might have seen. This Smeth's Diary, and like one of the posts, like sometimes I write like insightful writing, and sometimes I make like shit posts. And one of the ones like a while ago was my pronouns are he ha. So I'm that kind of asshole. I make that kind of joke sometimes, but um,
Yeah.
I wouldn't. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
Uh,
You
um,
can think I'm an asshole. It's okay. That's what I'm
That's
saying.
okay. No, I think if we're gonna be familiar with something, jokes are necessary and appropriate at times, um, pronouns included. But if you want to go ahead and get it out of the way, I, because of my pretty extensive knowledge of Christian, I know that the idea guys and some other trolls after them were the reason that Chris decided to try to be a woman.
Right.
They did this telling Chris that if they were a lesbian, more women would be attracted to them.
You're right. That's I'm going over. So I made a video. This is my background on Chris Chan. And why I'm talking
Mm-hmm.
about him. So I because of the lol cow thing, and how I saw some people being treated online, I thought Chris Chan is the archetype of the lol cow, and it's so highly documented the story. And I think that if you're like a either both a psychologist or a sociologist, there should be like massive research into this, in my opinion. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like yeah, like people should be writing like college capstone papers and shit about about Christian.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I made in one day. I made a video called Christian was abused, and that
Yeah.
has gotten a lot of traction. But I made it in one day, and I just like now I'm considering. I'm going to make a much more thorough with like a better camera and everything. and a lot more research, I'm gonna make a good video. So that will be something I would probably talk about. Um,
Yeah.
I also I got a lot of comments on that video, and the type of things people were saying are what I'm gonna talk about a lot. There was a lot. There's a whole lot of it's his fault, and like he was an evil, racist, sexist, or like person or homophobic, and he deserved everything he got. And that
Well,
angle, like you can be racist and homophobic, um, and like not do anything harmful to anybody, like but
well, let's look at this for a second. Okay.
mm,
Chris was around in his early 20s. He was in community college when they started getting on the internet, when they had the Sonichu website initially put up, which was then found by 4chan.
mm,
Not only that, Chris probably had the mind of someone much younger because his because of his autism, but also because his parents were so, I wouldn't even say doting, because doting has like a positive quality.
the
They
that
absolutely babied him.
that's the thing I started my research on. So I'm going over the whole Geno Samuel documentary again, which is going to be really painful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to figure out what parts I can skip, honestly. But
Yeah.
that's what because a lot of the comments I got were like, because I put in my video, like he was autistic, and people are saying like, oh, it doesn't give an excuse, but it like you should take it into account still, like
Yeah.
you shouldn't treat people different necessarily, but like sometimes you should. But what I wrote here was he like his big thing was constantly calling himself high functioning. I don't think by the definition of high functioning he ever truly was high functioning, like by any, because he never could have lived on his own. So that's like the standard for high functioning, and he just doesn't need it.
Now, he might have been able to. Do you know anything about Jacob Sockness?
No.
Okay. Jacob Sockness had a crush on Chris. They found each other over Twitter. This was probably in 2018, 2019. Now, I am in contact with a guy named Interzone who has interviewed Jacob Sockness twice now,
Hmm.
at least twice. Jacob Sockness swears up and down that he and Chris are around the same amount of functionality, but because they grew up so differently, and Jacob Sockness lives on his own, and Jacob Sockness
Hmm.
is not the most functional person socially, but he is a functional person. And
Well,
he
okay.
insists that
My
he and Chris are different only in their upbringing.
Yeah, I understand that. That's I completely agree. What I'm saying is a very what is the right word? Very a certain type of analysis where I would say that I wouldn't define him as high functioning purely by the fact that he has never lived on his own, and I don't think he could because of his upbringing. I think he could have, but I
Yeah.
think that he was failed on. And honestly, I feel like his parents tried. They didn't know what they were doing. I want to look into the services that were around in that area, because they might have even made the right choice in not wanting him to be separated from other schools, because it may have been one of two things. It could have been that those services had the support to actually really improve his life, or it could have been that those services mainly existed to separate him from the others to not make a detriment on the rest of the class. Like those are two scenarios
Hmm.
that could have been the reality in that area. And if it was number two, then his parents probably for on his part probably made the better choice in not wanting him to be into those. Either way, he was failed, and he didn't start learning like language until like he was in like elementary school. So
Yeah. So his father, God rest his soul, who was the more normal of the two parents, um, insisted that Chris be in normal classes, and he
mhm.
actually pulled a lot of strings to get him into community college.
Yeah.
His father was an engineer. He was a very intelligent person, and also a radio DJ at one point, which is really sad because Chris like sold all of his vintage records to pay for Legos and shit like that. His father probably wanted to do the best for Chris and to have Chris be functioning, but between his father not being entirely emotionally available and his mother certainly being a hoarder and highly emotionally unavailable, but also weirdly overbearing, I think that it was just a really bad combination because Chris
Yeah.
ended up relying on them for everything.
My interpretation was that his parents were in denial of him having autism for too long.
Mm,
Um, what I got here? Because I have my notes here on that part.
for sure.
Um, oh yeah, so my mom is a paraprofessional, and she was telling me about a parent that basically did what we're talking about with Chris here. Where their parent removed them from the what are the services called, the intensive needs care in school, and made it so the kid was in normal classes and stuff.
Yeah.
And then after that, then because the kid was failing in all regards, then fought to have those same services applied to the normal classroom setting. And the state stepped in and is saying that this is a certain type of abuse, like educational
Huh.
something abuse, on part of the parent.
Interesting.
Yeah,
And this is something that your mom is seeing happen right now.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know about the parents being in denial because Chris insisted for so long, for the entire time that we've been documenting Chris. They insisted that they were high functioning autism, which is probably something that they were parroting from their father or mother.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why
Yeah.
I say it's denial, because he got that, and I feel like that was a big for me. Like, we can disagree. This is my interpretation. That being parroted makes total sense. That's what exactly my thinking. I think that Chris ended up comparing himself to others in so many ways. In the early parts of this story, you hear so many stories about Chris like crying at his graduation because he didn't have like any achievements or stuff, and constantly like feeling like he deserved more because he tried so hard because he was autistic, and getting not nearly as much recognition as the other kids and stuff. But he probably did try really hard, and that that pressure and that pain in him, I feel, probably comes from a level of denial from his parents.
Yeah. No, you're probably right. Which leads into his father insisting that he went to a normal community college and things like that. Um, I think that he was he was most failed in not being protected from the internet.
Yeah,
Like the things that he was probably parroting first were the racism and the homophobia. He probably got that from his older parents, who live in fucking Virginia.
yeah,
Um, but some people managed to grow out of that. Chris, if they had been managed to live on their own, if they had ever gotten out on their own, may have been able to eventually grow out of that even decades later. But there was no opportunity for that, and Chris was never protected from the internet. That's like the main way in which I think Chris was abused, not just from the internet but by his parents.
yeah. It's a tricky question of that though, because like, at
Hmm.
what point does someone should someone be taken off the internet, and I think in general, this is something I have a lot to say about that's way beyond just Christian. Um, uh, I think in general we should have something I feel very strongly about. I've been thinking about for the past couple of days is we need. I really, really, really want there to be more age verification on everything, like Discord,
Yeah.
because I don't know, like if you're the I'm this kind of depraved person. I go into some Discords that are like NSFW stuff, and so think of me what you will. I haven't had this kind of conversation with you. I'm not going to really go into depth, but
Mm.
the thing that is the case with that kind of a Discord server, if it's public, it's just filled with meme shit that's gross and like just trying to be like shameful of people and like derogatory. And I think it's just because like younger people just get in there and they're just going buck wild. And I think we need to
Yeah.
have like if you're under 18, like your age should be part of your like secret like mechanisms in the things to try to separate people into responsible groups. And so if you're someone like Chris, like you don't need everybody to know that you're like autistic, but like you should be like in the same way that like a minor should be, segregated away from NSFW's communities, like then Chris should be segregated away from certain types of communities and stuff. Like that should be baked in.
I don't know. Well, let me start this off by saying Louisiana, where I live, actually passed a law that says very recently that says porn sites have to verify 18 plus account users.
Oh.
And they put that onus the of proof and the ability to prove that on the websites themselves.
Hmm.
That's kind of the issue, is that this is not a widespread thing. People memed about it because it's Louisiana and we're a red state. But I think it's a genuinely good idea if it was more widespread. Perhaps more sites, even non-porn sites, would be able to develop new ways
Yeah.
of verifying those sorts of things. I don't necessarily agree that autistic people, even lower functioning autistic people, should be automatically segregated when they're over 18 or over 21. But in the parenting aspect, in the early days, Chris had people coming to their house. Chris had people sending them weird letters. Chris had people telling them to take a video smashing their Xbox or whatever. I can't remember what console it was, in order to prevent blackmail.
Yeah.
You're telling me that that woman, I'm not sure if the father was alive or not at that point. You're telling me that woman didn't know that Chris was in the backyard filming themselves smashing an Xbox and
Mm.
didn't wonder why? Because the first thing that a good parent would have done is say, "Why are you doing this?" "Oh, it's because someone on the internet did it." You're not going to be on the internet for at least a little while.
Yeah.
At the very least, to protect you, if not to punish you. Like, it's just wild to me, the things that Chris got away with, not from an internet perspective, but from a parenting perspective.
Yeah.
You know, it's so clear. And, honestly, I think she was an abusive mother, but bless her heart, she's got dementia, and she's probably not the same person at all anymore now.
Mhm.
Um, she was absolutely emotionally absent.
Yeah.
And
She
it's
she didn't know
clear
what was
from the
going
way
on.
Chris talked about her. No.
Yeah.
And there
And
were times when she would be heard yelling in the background, like, "Chris,
yeah.
what are you talking about?" Da, 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 da. She knew that Chris was on the internet and
She
that all of
vaguely
this
knew,
shit was
but
coming
she
from the internet.
she just didn't like her way of handling it was just that one yell, and I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I yelled, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she was like, she came across to me as like really depressed and not. She couldn't even take care of herself. So
Hmm. Absolutely. I mean, she was a hoarder and clearly probably undiagnosed ASD or something else like that. Very, very much cut off emotionally from Chris and the rest of the world. Um, which she's a much older woman, and so it's not surprising she's undiagnosed. But I think that Chris was primarily abused by his parents up until the point where his father had died and his mother literally couldn't take care of herself anymore. That was when the real
Yeah.
abuse from the internet started to be the primary abuse.
I'm taking notes, by the way.
That's cool. Yeah. Um yeah, it's a tricky thing with Chris because you can tell that they harbor a lot of narcissism, that they harbor which of course, you know, they literally think they're the real player one avatar Jesus. Like that's their name now. Um it's clear that they harbor a lot of really awful personality traits,
Who?
but
The troll?
Chris.
Chris. Oh, yeah,
No,
okay.
no, Chris. Chris is a narcissist and
Yeah.
probably doesn't have a great grasp on empathy. I would say that's probably why Chris really talks to people in the way that they do. Like, I'm not sure if you've gotten to the most recent episode of the Geno Samuel documentary,
I might not have. I've
but
watched all of them, but probably not the most recent or something.
okay. I did watch the most recent one the other night with my friends on Discord, and it is getting really sad because we're getting up to 2019 and in the timeline, and it's really clear that Chris is going deeper and deeper into monetary debt. They are constantly in and out of court with their mother, and from the view of people who like went to court to see Chris and things like that, it's been documented that Chris was starting to slip into very childlike demeanors, like
Yeah.
making very loud sounds in court and things like that.
Yeah.
And that had not been the case before. Like Chris is regressing at this point in 2019, you know?
Maybe. Um, I want to talk a lot about the way the trolls behaved, and uh, I really don't like the type of rhetoric, and I get this a lot because of the type of criticism that I'm very comfortable giving. But like
Mm.
I'll give a criticism of like, oh, like in general, like I think people should know better or try to know better, and I think telling people or trying to educate people to know better is a good thing to do. And then the response is just, it's just the internet, you idiot. You know, like what did you expect? I hate that.
Mm.
I think we should strive to be better. And like, you know, like when we were fucking cavemen, we would, you know, rape and pillage all the time, and we got better because we developed like social rules and stuff. And I think we're kind
Mhm.
of trying to evolve out of the caveman times of the internet, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. We are entering into an entirely new human age, and none of us are educated in how to handle it because we are the beginning. We will be the education.
Yeah.
You know, Chris Chan will probably be part of the education.
Mm-hmm.
And it's it's easy for I don't know, because I've been on the internet so long and because I've been in 4chan and Christian and lolcow type circles for so long, I have a really intense grasp on what this does to people and the type of media and internet literacy that is necessary and the type of restriction that's necessary to keep people from going through this. But no amount I'm convinced that no amount of internet help would ever have been enough for Chris. It was always something that his parents or his mom were going to have to do because Chris had no self-control. Chris still has no self-control.
Right. But what do you I
Um
agree with that. Sorry if I'm interrupting a thought.
yeah.
I'll let you go. Continue.
No.
Okay, so
I was just gonna say that the trolls themselves
okay.
were, yeah. That you want to get into the trolls though. Do you have any specific questions about
Well,
those?
it's just that so people only want to talk about the parents and stuff. And so you talk and so I want to say that if you were part of the troll stuff, you might not have even realized it, but you were abusing somebody. And like even some of the kind of like even like the Liquid Chris saga, and everybody says that that was lighthearted and
Yeah.
great, you know, but like even that um and like it compared to everything else, it's just nothing. But like even that um
Yeah.
and so I want to try to teach people or tell people to try to be a little bit self-aware. One of the things I said in my Chris was abused video that I made one day, but the important takeaway was we always think that people deserve it, always. And if you
Yeah.
have that feeling that you really think someone deserves it, that's a sign, I think, that you should be a little bit self-critical.
Yeah. Um, so Liquid Chris, and I'm gonna go left hand sideways for a second, but the best perspective that I've seen on Liquid Chris comes from my friend Interzone, who is he makes a lot of content about the occult, which is where he came into the Christian thing. Because Chris in the later years has been very into the occult and
Mm-hmm.
magic and convincing himself that he is this magical being.
Mm-hmm.
Um and Chris has a history of cursing people, like literally putting a spell on people, cursing people with the curse Yehamiha thing. Um, Asperchew, which is different from Liquid Chris. Asperchew, I forget who that particular person was a parody um of Chris's Sonichu. And I think that that is actually uh the least damaging trolling that ever happened to Chris. Now,
Yeah.
Liquid Chris, who Chris also cursed and said lots of horrible things about, Liquid Chris didn't really do a lot wrong. He did the parody thing until he brought the girl into it.
Yeah.
And at
Yeah.
that point, he was fucking with Chris's romantic and emotional feelings about a real person.
Yeah. That was weird. Yeah.
Yeah. So I
I
think
agree.
Liquid Chris actually did a lot of damage.
I think until then, honestly, Chris was kind of in on it too.
Yeah. I don't know. It's so hard to tell if Chris was ever in on anything.
I felt like until then, Chris was they were doing the back and forth like singing challenges and stuff, and Chris's willingness to be part of that sort of to me was like, okay, well, he understands this is in good fun kind of thing
Maybe, yeah.
to some extent. Um, but yeah, I'm getting choked up.
It's
But the girls thing, the constantly making like fake girlfriends to manipulate him, that all really freaks me out.
it's really freaky, and the girls involved, like even if the original troll wasn't a girl, the troll themselves would usually get a real girl or a voice changer, but usually a real girl to
Or a little
interact with
boy.
Chris over the phone, or a little boy. That did happen one
Yeah.
time. To interact with Chris over the phone or go on a fake date or whatever. And those girls are fucking insidious. Excuse me if I'm cursing too much on your
No,
stream,
it's fine.
but okay. Those girls are insidious because it wouldn't have been possible without them, and they should have known better. Like these are people in their 20s. Like I
Mm-hmm.
can't imagine having the malice and the vitriol, even if you really were in it in 2010 or 2015 or something. That's a little too late in the timeline, actually. But if you were in it in the early days and you saw Chris as this hateful, bigoted, nasty person,
Mm-hmm.
even then, like you said, if you're having this thought that, oh, I should do something to them because they deserve it, that's something on you. That's something on the troll,
Yeah,
you know?
unless
Um,
like if someone is um like literally like if you know someone has like people like in their basement they're torturing, okay, you can You know what I mean? But
Hmm.
they're just a like a shitty person. That doesn't matter. You know, we're all shitty people.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. And at some point, someone should have called a wellness check, like in the earlier days, because I think in the later days, it wouldn't have really taken hold that much. But I think that if anything, people showing up to their house was not the answer. Even the couple, which is this is around 2017, I think 2018, because they sent Chris a Switch initially as like their hello gift. We're moving to Virginia and we're going to help you, Chris. You can move in with us and we're going to help you. And this couple, um, they still weren't enough. It is just, it's a combination of Chris being so unself-aware and self-centered and selfish and all of those
A
other
lot of that I
things.
think comes from the way he was treated though too. Like he could have, like you said, he could have gotten better and moved past it, but he never did.
I, I think that's like, when I said he could have gotten better, Chris probably could have learned not to just say hateful shit out in the open. But I don't know, and I don't think we'll ever know if those intrinsic narcissistic personality traits are something that could have been changed. You know, that could be just something that Chris was always going to have, and they
From
could have learned better social skills.
from what I know about narcissism, I feel like it probably could have. Um, so narcissism is based around, so especially being like a streamer and stuff. It's
Hmm.
based around you kind of create like a world where you are at the center of it in your mind.
Yeah.
And a streamer, it's easy because you can make a real world that you're at the center of, and you want people to feed into it. And the way
Yeah.
Chris was treated and everything, that created the feedback loop to create this narcissist. And I feel like honestly, Chris had no other option than to become narcissistic to protect himself because the bubble to have this own internal world where he's at the center that gives him the power and where he had no power really in his life. And that's where the idea guys I think were so insidious because they took even that away from him.
Yeah. Um, just to talk about the trolls, I think we talk a lot about the trolls who did Chris direct harm, but we don't talk nearly enough about the trolls who pretended to be real fans and said things like, you know, we're going to make a quickie and Chris is the main character of the internet. And oh my God, I can't live without my Chris update and shit like that. Even the people who were genuine, like there were people and still are people who are genuine about enjoying Sonichu the comic and they want Chris to make more content. But there's this in between of the abusive trolls and the genuine fans of Sonichu, wherein those people are feeding Chris's narcissism with positivity,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
And that I think really contributed eventually to the CPU goddess arc and shit like that. Obviously the Jesus thing most likely came from it's probably a form of messianic psychosis due to only being able to read the Bible in jail.
Um,
But before that, he still thought he was a goddess.
I feel honestly, um, you might really disagree with me. I don't know. I'm trying to think if I should try to say this in a way you you won't hate me for.
No, it's okay. It's
So I
okay.
feel like a lot of this narcissism and positive reinforcement stuff came from uh, the LGBTQ trans movement of Chris, and in becoming trans,
Mm,
now he unlocked this uncritical and what is the word like what is the word like when a un unconditional support with no
yeah.
critical analysis like by just by doing that, and he didn't have nearly that much until then.
Well, okay. Let's think about this in arcs of the Christian history. First of all, I haven't seen any evidence of that. I was around and I was already, you know, openly queer by 2015 or 2014, around the time that Chris was supposedly transitioning. And I never saw any supportive dialogue. It was always really clear that there was especially after, of course, it came out which trolls were supporting this, but it was always really clear that this was something that Chris was just doing to get girls, and that it was probably not the case that Chris was actually transgender.
Well,
that was everything that I was seeing. Now,
okay,
you did have...
I'll let you continue.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you can just bulldoze me because I interrupt sometimes. That's interesting to hear from you, because from anybody, but because having not been so immersed at the time, and then watching the Geno Samuel documentary, that was like, seemed like it was like, in the back of my mind, I was like, that's probably the case, what you're describing. But in his documentary, that is kind of glossed over, to like extremely glossed over. And I was like, I want to know more there. So what would I like look at to get more information about that? And why would that have been glossed over in the Geno Samuel documentary?
Well, it's glossed over because it's Chris's entire adult life, that he's trying to segment into hour-long episodes, and we're only at hour 60 at this point,
seems
out of
important.
Chris's entire life.
That seems important, like the whole, like, during the trans arc, that seems like an important thing to mention, of the manipulation going on there.
Well, let's... again, I wanted to look at this in arcs, because there are pockets of time where Chris gained more attention all of a sudden. The beginning of the trans arc was one of them.
Okay.
And then there was another one on Twitter around 2020, around 2019, 2020, where Chris got a lot of attention again because of probably the Jacob Sockness thing. They were having a big feud on Twitter. Jacob Sockness had a crush on him, and Chris was trying to go see him and stuff like that. It was a big thing that people were following, and this was before the incest part. So you have the big trans thing, you have the Twitter arc, and then you have the incest thing. And between the initial trans arc, which is where I saw people in the LGBT community being very displeased, and the incest arc, where a lot of new people had eyes on Chris and really did not know the history, the Christory, if you will. They did not know. And so they're seeing this person be misgendered, supposedly. They're seeing this person be attacked, and they don't know why. And so I did see in I believe it happened in 2021. I did see people saying, oh, well, Christian did a horrible thing, but that doesn't mean you should misgender them. And it's like, no, you don't understand, because you haven't been here. You're new, right? Millions of new eyes were on Chris in 2021. And so there was uncritical support of, at the very least, their gender at that point.
But we're talking, that makes sense as me coming in later. Me coming in later, that's my takeaway, because I'm past that point.
Yes.
Okay. So you're telling me, and I'll just believe you on this, that there was a lot, I do believe you on this, that there was a lot of criticism of that when that was happening. Okay.
And I'm not sure exactly where you could find, specific screenshot evidence of this. I just know that it was discussions happening in Discords and, amongst me and my friends who followed it and things like that.
Like something.
Well, thank you. I like I said, I've been up in it for a long time. I don't just follow Chris too. I follow other lolcows. And I do tend to be a lurker. Up until recently, I've never really made lolcow specific content. But that means that I ingest a lot of every side of the conversation generally. And so I see what you're saying. I did see uncritical LGBT support of Chris's gender at one point, but it was way after. And it was people who were brand new to Chris.
Right. My gut feeling, and my assumption was that it made a lot of being so narcissistic, and I really, like I already said, I really empathize with the narcissism, because I think that was Chris's best defense mechanism against the trolling. I think that making the move to being a woman, it was like the best move Chris could have made to get support. But I think in that, I think support is harmful too, like you said earlier. Um, like the people that are just like, feeding into the narcissistic feedback loop.
Yeah. I never, before the weird, like, and I assumed that it was a lot of young people. I assumed that it was a lot of
I
people who
want to
hadn't
mention
been on
that
the
in a
internet very
second.
long.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did see, like I said, those weird enabling, like, don't misgender people just because they did a crime. Like, I did see that in 2021, but I assumed that it was young new internet people. And I saw so many people over the years prior to that try to get Chris out of being supposedly transgender because they knew what was really going on. They knew it was a troll. You
Hmm.
know, people were genuinely trying to help Chris at many, many points.
Okay. So about that, I have a theory. So this is really helpful because you're a lot more familiar than me. Um, I have a theory that a lot of the trolling came from. There's two things. Like I
Mm,
mentioned earlier, I think that young people getting into bigger communities taints them and makes them dumber. I didn't really exactly specifically, but I think that's absolutely. That's why I really wish, what when I said earlier, like I hate when these NSFW communities like they're really like public, and that means that there are going to be these lying like idiot like younger people that get in there and just makes the whole thing stupid, and it makes the older people stupid too because they think that this is just normal, older until a point. So like your early 20s, I think you're just gonna be like held back online by these idiot 15-year-olds online who are just gonna like look like another 20-year-old, and they
mm,
just make you stupider, and like not just in like NSFW like posting discords and shit, like just in everything on Facebook, on all social media. I think they just make everybody stupider. And but I feel like a lot of the trolls towards Chris were either very young or like still young, early 20s, and were kind of they were in a community that was kind of spearheaded by these young little psychos, and I feel like a lot of
yeah,
them probably would look back on their behavior and actions like horribly, and
yeah,
I think we need to, I mean, like we as in like me and anybody that agrees with me, um, enable them to regret that. I think that because on the comments of my video there is a lot of um, people just trying to hoist any responsibility away from the trolls onto Chris or onto anything else. Um,
yeah,
and I think like it's okay. It like if you were young, and you were part of that, it's okay. But we do need to like it's okay, but you can feel bad about it, and you can still move on. And like I don't hate you, but don't
yeah.
don't don't repress that bad feeling.
Yeah. And Blue Spike is a good example from the early days. Blue Spike, I believe, was the troll who was like 13 or 14-year-old boy
Yeah.
who pretended to be a girl. But it depends on the person in your early 20s because if you look at probably the worst troll, Isabella Janke.
Yeah.
Um, if you don't know, by the way, Isabella Janke was not going to release Chris's admission of rape. Isabella Janke was not the person to release it. She sent it to Chris's possible new girlfriend who wanted to meet Chris and see if they could get together to make that girl upset. And then that girl, who was much more normal, although like
Still probably
mentally
not that
impaired in
normal.
some ways,
Yeah.
she was autistic in some way, I believe, which is why she thought she and Chris could get together. That girl was horrified and released the Discord tape to the police. That's what happened. Isabella Janke is a completely functional college student in Texas.
Yeah, I've heard things about her. But to be fair, Not I don't know about fair, but in her own way, she is also a lol cow.
She is.
Maybe, and I don't want to fall into the same trap that I'm talking about, where I think she deserves it. I think, I think the buck has to stop somewhere.
I don't know. I think that Isabella Janke deserves
She
to, at
did,
the very least,
she did criminal.
be involved in the court
Yeah,
case.
she is criminally liable, but I don't think she
Yeah.
deserves the. I don't think anybody deserves the lockout treatment. If she's criminally liable, she deserves legal, like, and that kind of thing. I don't like she.
Yeah.
I don't think. I think giving her the Chris Chan treatment will just literally make her worse. You know.
You might be right. And this is why I had the lolcow panel actually, because if you don't mind me talking about a couple of other lolcows for a second.
Sure, I'm not familiar
Um
with a lot of them.
that's okay. That's okay. I'll give you a brief description. There are people like Shani for Christ. Shani for Christ is a completely mentally functional, although narcissistic and horrific person. She abused her kids on camera. She had a house filled with literal feces that she had to vacate because she spent $100,000 of her now husband's, what do you call it when someone dies? The money he got from a will. They
Yeah.
essentially spent $100,000 in a year
I'm
and
gonna
got kicked
defend
out
her
of
as
their
soon
house.
as you're done. I'm gonna defend her.
That, I mean, if you want to, I don't think anybody on the internet would agree with uh would agree with defending Shani for Christ.
I don't know anything
But
about her,
I
but
think really quick, I think she's a good example of what we should do with lolcows who are
hmm,
harmful and who are clearly aware of what they're doing,
okay,
because she's just an e-beggar. The answer
okay,
is to do what we did to Shani for Christ and to push her off of every platform and mass report her off of every platform and get the police involved to get her kids taken away, because that's what should have happened, and
yes,
remove
yes,
her e-beggar status. Make
yes,
her live a normal life.
yes, yeah, well, yes and no. I don't agree with the first half, and especially I just emotionally don't agree with the way you're. I don't know anything about. Maybe I'm sure, and I don't know this for a fact, but I'm sure if I watched some of the stuff you've watched and I was more familiar,
Mm-hmm.
I would emotionally be connecting with you more. But when you
Yeah.
tell me she abused her kids and she had a house filled with feces and that she was just relying on getting money from like her dead husband and begging for money online and stuff, uh, um,
No, it was her husband too.
yeah,
Her
yeah,
husband got the money from his parent dying.
yeah. Okay. There is. I'm gonna write this down because it's important. I think, for the lolcow
Okay.
thing. But how am I gonna write this? E-begging cycle. I think that there's a cycle that
Yeah.
happens when people a lot of lolcows end up making some type of profit from it. But what I was going to say earlier is that she doesn't sound perfectly sane. And like the house full of feces thing, like she obviously, if she's abusing her kids, that's like needs to stop.
Yeah.
And I don't know enough to like. I mean, everything I have to say, it comes with an absolute grain of salt. But I think even the worst people should be protected in some ways, and the way that there shouldn't be some vigilantism. There needs to be some type of official way to handle this stuff. But and
So
there's
the official way was, that's why I'm giving her as an example of how to treat lolcows that are harmful. I'm not actually talking about Chris when I talk about her. I'm
I
talking about
know.
her because she is an example of a purely harmful
I know,
individual.
but
She
I
needed
don't want to take your word for it. I want to fucking, because I don't know. I want to fucking stand up for this woman. I don't know. Like, she sounds awful, and everything you told me is awful. But yeah, that's just my inclination. But I wanted to say something that I find is very important that I see, and this is part of what inspired me to make this Chris was abuse thing. It's just people in a microcosm, people that aren't even lol cows, but people that are treated very poorly online. They get made a fool of, but they get kind of they get like a benefit from it, or they get a following, or they get money from it. That creates that in itself is like a microcosm of a lol cow thing, and I think it creates a cycle. So you get all this attention and money, or attention you can convert it into money if you're smart, and if you're gonna be a fucking lol cow, for the love of God, at least make money off of it. but but they but also that's insidious. So what happens is now you've got this access to money and stuff, and it's coming from the abuse of you, and it's really easy to be abused. Something I've said before. Well, something I know what you're gonna say, but like I'm about something I said before, and you're gonna have the same reaction to, for the same reason, is I think that one of the reasons that we need to protect people from becoming sex workers, is because it's so easy. And yes, it's hard and it fucks you up, but it's so easy to just get naked and let yourself be exploited. It's so easy to let people abuse you and just get money from that, that it's not, that it's going to be easier than anything else. And it's like, it's hard to even move past that. Like if you haven't like learned some other way to exist, and now the way that you're getting your money and stuff is by the abuse of yourself.
Well, let me say this, and I think that if you're gonna make content on lolcows in general, I think you do need to watch some documentaries on these types of people and be exposed to the really horrific shit they do and say, because someone like Foodie Beauty or Shani for Christ, even in some cases Chris, they were not making money on people abusing them. They primarily make money by spewing out hate and vitriol and causing drama, because that's what gets views on the internet. They do it to an extent on purpose. They're abusing other people. And Foodie Beauty, someone else who's currently active that you should look into, Foodie Beauty is currently not abusing. She's currently abusing everyone else. She's constantly picking fights. She's appropriating the Muslim hijab in order to cause drama and make people talk about her. She's causing harm to other people.
That doesn't seem wrong itself.
I mean, it's not directly causing like physical harm or emotional harm to a particular person. It's just generally wrong and stupid and gross.
Look, I'm gonna look into this stuff.
If you could let me finish really quick. Shani for Christ got the police involved with her because she wasn't just abusing people online. She was abusing her children. She was making them live in piss and squalor. Her children didn't have bedding, and their mattresses were covered in piss when people went in to investigate her house. Like, this is an example of the right thing was done. She got her kids taken away. She's now off almost every platform. She can barely live stream anymore. She's no longer an e-beggar. And I think that ought to happen more, honestly. Okay.
Okay. And thank you for holding your boundaries there. Because that means I can talk to you like more genuinely, and you can hold your own boundaries. It's rare. So I agree that from what you described, like that needs to stop and it has to be stopped. But I just really, really don't think that random people on the internet are the people who do it. And especially because the people with the time and energy are going to be like often younger and stupid, and they're gonna like just do it. If this is your mission to do this, to do this kind of work and stop these kind of people, you're you're probably gonna be young and stupid and you're gonna do this to like to other people that actually don't deserve it. Like, oh, you're gonna like get them swatted and like get like people to go and like inspect their house and stuff. And I believe that there should be some type of like official like government agency doing this, and there isn't. And so I understand what you're saying, and I get it. I do get it, but I don't know if you heard that, but there's like limbs falling off of trees in my yard. They're making noises.
That's okay.
But yeah,
No,
I do get it, but yeah, I think it's also scary because it empowers vigilantism, and people really love doing this to people online. Like, people enjoy it too much.
Yeah.
And it should only come from people that don't want to actually be doing like this.
Yeah. Absolutely. Nobody wants to be calling the cops on Shani for Christ because she horrifically abused her kids. Nobody wants to be the guy to have to, and I forget what this guy's name was, but he was an older internet age lolcow who eventually went to prison for doing awful shit to his little sister, which he had admitted on Twitter. But there's, like you said, there's not a section of the FBI that's going around trying to find pedophiles on Twitter necessarily. There might be a small amount, but not enough to actually catch these people. So an appropriate amount of vigilantism has been required up to this point.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these people don't have huge followings. They're like micro lolcow.
Well, yeah, okay.
And
yes.
Yeah.
But like, I don't agree with the first thing you said, was that there's nobody actually wants to be doing that, like to be reporting people and stuff. I think there are people that want to be doing that, and those people want to do it too much. I've seen people get reported to the FBI and like just out of spite, and they just end up reporting each other and then like dragging each other down. I've seen this, and it is like awful. Like,
yeah. No, you're right. There are people who, for some reason, it's their God-given mission to find people to report to the internet, to report to the police on the internet, rather. Mm-hmm. And I do know that those lolcow hunters, they're like the minority, but they're a really loud, dangerous minority. So to say there's nobody who wants to do this, that is a misstatement. But oftentimes when it gets to that point, people who don't want to be involved with the police get involved. People who are just genuinely horrified get involved. That's why we call it horror cows. Yeah. Like, once you get past lolcow, you're a horror cow. That's what Shani for Christ is.
I like that that scenario a lot more. I just think that talking about it as if this is something that people need to necessarily like take up, like, it's hard to do something like this, and as like, if you want to do this like as your thing, like as a focused thing, like somebody just being like, whoa, I need to do something about this like person, like that is not, that's not what I'm talking about. That's that I emotionally am 100% on board with you on that.
You're talking Kiwi farms. You're talking about like lolcow hunters.
I've never heard that term, but it's just that, if that's your mantle and that you're doing that like as a project, first of all, you can make like a job out of that where you make content and stuff, and that's its own whole big problem. But also there's no oversight, and if that was your job or your man, like you should have like a code of ethics you have to follow.
Yeah, and there are, like with the Christorians, and with people who consistently follow lolcows, there is a general rule, and that rule is we aren't the content. We are not the person, And to do something like what people did to Chris and fuel the flames is in the general sphere, the millions of lurkers like me do not engage is the first rule. Um and I'll completely admit that my lurking comes from morbid curiosity. I'll give someone a view occasionally, but another responsible way to do that is to only watch reaction channels, people who react to lolcows, especially harmful ones. I never watch Foodie Beauty. I never watched Shandy for Christ. I watched people who were responding to them and trying to make it known that these were harmful people and making content about that. But I have a morbid curiosity with people who just don't know how to fucking act right. And I don't know how to get around that at this
That's
point.
not
I'm
necessarily. That's not.
trying.
I wouldn't say that's necessarily a problem. Um, that's not the thing that I think is the problem.
No.
I
I
think.
think what you're identifying is people on Kiwi farms and people who take recording Christery or recording other lolcows to a severe nth degree to the point that it consumes their life.
Yeah, well, like you said, you haven't watched these people that you're saying are really bad, but you watch other people like cover them.
Hmm.
How do you know that those people covering them are really the best people and that you could actually trust them? Like that they're like they have a massive incentive to turn people into monsters for their own benefit and gain.
Well, the way that I parse out content is by paying attention to what these people are actually saying. For instance, there's Zachary Michael, who covers Foodie Beauty on occasion. And Zachary Michael puts out major effort to make it into essentially a fucking PSA. Like, don't be like her. This is what she's doing right now. This is what she said about the gay community. This is what she's doing to take advantage of people. And he not only with other people that he follows who are not as harmful, he offers constructive criticism. He offers ways for them to get out of their bad situation, whatever it may be. Now with Foodie Beauty in particular, he's basically just saying, look at this horrific person and understand that this is not the thing to do on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of it needs to be centered around before these people get to horror cow status. It needs to be centered around being constructive.
Right. There's such a dilemma here for me. I don't know if I'm just repeating myself, but so I made a video about Christian, but I tried not to like even in the thumbnail for this one, I took a picture like the one of the most popular pictures of Chris like early like a happy picture of him, and I cut him out and I used the silhouette of him so that you can only see his room because I don't even want to show a picture of him
Yeah.
like I want to talk about in my video and stuff. I want to talk about the things people say about him and how he's treated and that kind of thing. But it's just I'm really afraid that I will be taking advantage of him, and I wish it were the case that, and it's not. I mean, someone in my chat said idealist Smith. Yeah, it's true. But I wish it were the case that there was no gain to be made from that, and there was no gain to be made from being a vigilante at all. It should only be like at your own expense, honestly. Like the fact that I could make a lot of money just focusing on nothing but Chris Chan, that it's in itself to me seems like a problem.
Well, it can be a problem. I think that again, Zachary Michael does it really well because he doesn't just cover people who are blatantly irredeemable. He covers a lot of people who are very redeemable and who he genuinely cares about getting better. People like Amberlynn Reed. who is 520 pounds and really needs to lose weight and has essentially used her internet status to gain more weight because she's honestly a pretty lazy person and doesn't really have a lot of control over herself.
Yeah, and I'm sure she
Zachary
started.
cares. He cares that she gets better and that she has people who she can look to outside of the yes men in her life. But she's also a public figure, and she has 100,000, 150,000 followers on YouTube. You know, he's completely in his rights to make reaction content about her. It's not like he's just picking some random person with 2 followers and making a show out of them. You know, Amber Lynn already did that to herself, and now Zachary is trying to help her.
I can relate to the character of Zachary that you're painting. Like I feel the same.
Yeah.
But it's just also I just in that there's a really a perverse incentive inside of there that is scary.
Yeah. And you know, something else that I think makes Zach's pretty different is that Amber Lynn was not always such a vitriolic person. She's pretty vitriolic. She's done a lot of kind of transphobic and weird shit that just doesn't rub people the right way. But Zachary used to be her viewer. He had no followers and started making reaction content to her specifically to talk to her and be like, Amberlyn, I watch you. I'm your fan. Why are you doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the context there matters. If you were to go out and be a Gibby, which I do watch Gibby, and just make Chris Chan centric content, Gibby was never trying to help Chris Chan. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say that he's a bad person or anything, but he was never trying to help Chris Chan. I think everyone kind of saw Chris Chan as irredeemable years ago. He just wanted to do it because he also had a morbid fascination.
My thing isn't I'm not trying to help Chris Chan. I don't think Chris is irredeemable. I don't think anybody's irredeemable. I like maybe like
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're irredeemable, like it's like incredibly medical and rare. But I think everybody's redeemable. But I think that if I wanted to help Chris Chan, I would have to say nothing about him. I would have to do something behind the scenes and make no video. But I want to help. I want everybody to learn, from the story, and hopefully, I want to. At first, I can hold myself to certain standards, and maybe people will follow my footsteps if I hold myself to certain standards. But I can also just tell people a way of tell people a different way to deal with it.
Yeah. I had a thought for a second, then I kind of lost it. But I don't necessarily think that making this type of content is harmful. That was my thought actually. And this is kind of having nothing to do with you really, but even trying to help Chris behind the scenes was never possible. You know, with the couple who was moving to Virginia to help Chris, he put them on blast. They sent him private letters and they sent him the switch privately without any announcement on the internet. And Chris just blasted all of their intentions and their private letters that specifically you can see in his videos. Like they say, please don't put this on the internet. You know, we're trying to keep this as private as possible. He just put him on blast. He didn't care. And so helping Chris in that way was never possible. Even now, if you were to start writing jail letters to Chris, he would just send them off and send responses off to the Praters, and they would just put it on the Etsy page. You know what I'm saying?
If I were to write Chris a letter, I would write it knowing that it would probably be public, and so I would be like, I would tell him what I think, and I wouldn't say anything, private in it. I would have that expectation, but yeah.
Yeah.
That would actually be great if I wrote him a letter that then he put on blast, that I just give him the advice that I don't know. I mean, he wouldn't listen to it at this point. It's way too late. Way too late. I mean, he's fucking in jail.
No.
So
No, and I've been told a million times, even before he went to jail, I've been told, like, Johnny, if anyone was going to write Chris a letter, it would be you. Like, you need to write Chris letters and stuff like that and try and get art and shit like that. And I'm like, at this point, I don't even necessarily want it. I don't even think that it matters. And I think the best thing is for people to just let Chris go.
yeah.
And I am sad that that's the case because I think everybody needs some level of interaction. But people have tried to interact with Chris on a normal friendship level the entire time, and it's never worked because of Chris.
It's not. I don't think. I wouldn't say it's because of Chris though. I think it's the whole cycle. Like Chris, I don't think Chris knows how to be a private person.
No.
But I wouldn't blame Chris for that character flaw. I would blame his entire life. Like I don't think he was born to be like that. You know, I think I really am along on the side of environment, nurture versus nature. I think Chris was born to be autistic. I don't think he was born to be Christian.
Mm-mm. No, and I agree. And that's where the idea that Chris was abused by his parents and by the internet is completely valid.
Okay, so
but we still have to say that in the things that Chris did independent of the internet, he had culpability. They had culpability. I know I'm switching back and forth between he and they. It's kind of like I do it when I talk about different parts in the timeline. So I hope that's not confusing.
I didn't notice it, so it's not confusing. Okay, so since you are a Christorian, all right, give me, what do you think are the important, so considering what I'm trying to do, could you tell me, do you understand what I want to do? I want to make a video talking about the ways that people treated him and try to give a cautionary tale and try to warn people before they do those kind of things in the future. And so I want to ask you, what things do you think I should focus on?
So, in my opinion, the hook for your video is Chris Chan, but the content and the takeaway ought to be a combination of basic human empathy and media literacy. We have, and this goes back to people being very young, we have a paradigm on the internet wherein most young people on the internet, I know I was, 9, 12, 14, I was completely anonymous because I knew that people wouldn't want to interact with me if they figured out I was 13, on the sites that I was on, like Gaia and shit like that. A lot of those people were in their 20s. Want to. They shouldn't, yeah. But I was a stupid 12-year-old, and I wanted that human interaction.
You were a smart 12-year-old, though.
That's also true. Also true. Like,
but we need to protect smart 12-year-olds,
We do, and it's unfortunate because I was personally on the internet as much as I was because I was in a very poor situation, and I was very I was abusively sheltered, we'll say that. Mm-hmm. And so the internet did save my life. I met someone on Gaia Online who found out that I was suicidal at 14 and literally wrote me letters until it saved my life. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how to put those two ideas together. The idea that the internet saved my life, and also the idea that the internet is really not for children. I don't know how to convert those two together. And I really think that if you could come up with a thesis that is children maybe should be protected from the internet, but we should also be actively teaching them about empathy and how to treat other people despite being anonymous, I think that would be really important.
say that last. I was typing. Sorry, I got distracted. Say that last part again.
It's okay. We can tell children that the internet is dangerous all we want, but they're still probably going to be anonymous. And so, kind of like sex ed, we don't necessarily want young teenagers and shit like that having sex, but we should still be teaching them
Okay.
sex ed.
Yeah. Okay.
You
So like,
know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe.
Like,
Yeah.
teach empathy and teach people that they're not as anonymous as they think they are. That's a really important rule of thumb too.
That's the thing, though, about teach empathy. I just believe that. I mean, and this is not I believe this like an idiot. Like I don't know. I don't know the science, but I feel like if I talked to a child psychologist, they might reaffirm what I'm saying. But I think that most young people are just little crazy psychos, and I think that empathy comes like from like your brain your capacity for empathy doesn't even exist until you're like 20, I think.
Yeah. It comes from direct life experience. But I do think that some of it can come from example. Like, you know what? Let me just give you a little skeleton of a video real quick. You
Yeah.
open the video and you do it from a first person perspective and you say, imagine if you will, you are inundated every day with thousands of messages telling you to do awful things to yourself or telling you to do things that your parents wouldn't want you to do, or trying to trick you in some way.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Imagine, if you will, this is years and years of your life, and then you're Christian. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, okay.
Like, you
I can see.
can give real tangible examples. It's just going to kind of depend on how you present it.
Yeah, really put people in his shoes.
Yeah. And considering that Chris in their early 20s, probably had the mind of around a 13 or 14-year-old. A 13 or 14-year-old watching that would probably be freaked out as they should be, you know?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, and it depends on the person entirely. You know, some people never develop empathy in a real manageable way. But we can't I'm on your side in the optimism. Like, we can't stop trying to make the internet better. We can go on the internet and we can know we're probably not going to be surprised that day. Everybody's probably still going to be an asshat that day.
Yeah.
But we can't stop trying. And I think that it's unfortunate that Chris had to happen. You know what? But I think it's unfortunate in the way that the thousands of years of female subjugation happened. Female subjugation happened. Slavery happened. And it was horrific. And in a perfect world, it never would have happened. But you know what? Right now in 2023, we are looking back at that with the crystal clear lens of the internet and seeing why we never want to be like that again.
Yeah, but the thing is, even though you say crystal clear, even though it's still actually kind of tainted by the perspectives of those telling the story. Like, we've talked about the same things from different perspectives at multiple times now. I value your perspective more than mine, but mine comes from like sort of being, I was like, I don't even think I was aware of Christianity until like a year and a half ago or something. But I think I'd like seen some stuff, but I didn't really put it together that this was a person or anything. I just like saw like memes once in a while. But yeah, like my perspective comes from 2022 retrospective perspective, which lops in a lot of stuff. Like my assumption about the LGBT trans stuff was that it was much more of a supportive period of his time. I feel like that was kind of glossed over in the Geno Samuels thing, and I would have liked to have known that it was not something that was incredibly supported at the time, because that's my perspective now. And so, yeah, I think it is all. It's really, and there's just so much information that you're just going to take in bits and pieces and have to trust the perspective of whoever's telling you.
Yeah. A good example of that is that I forget which video it was, but ContraPoints made a video that it wasn't all about Christian, but involved Christian.
Yeah.
And it was very clear at the time that Contra had no experience with Christery. She was one of those people who was saying, don't misgender Chris. And it was painful to watch, honestly, because I think Contra's a really smart person. It's just she wasn't there, you know? It's like with you and seeing the Geno Samuel documentary, and that's an excellent example of what you were talking about, you know, things being tainted by individual perspectives. It's so unfortunate that people weren't there to experience it, because that's part of what made me so it's part of what made me have a lot of, like, I'm trying to think of the word for it. When you're holding a sword, dude, when you're holding something and you know it's dangerous, like
Yeah.
a feeling of respect.
Yeah.
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 But at the same time, you know, I am burdened with a lot of empathy, and I always have been. That is just who I am as a person. And so, like, I was one of those people who felt really sorry for Chris and wanted to support them at different points. And it wasn't because I thought they were trans, and it wasn't because I necessarily forgave them for all the horrible shit that they did and said. It was just because I don't think anyone should be treated that way.
Okay.
You know?
It's I don't know the year, but it's early in the years of the Wikipedia or whatever and stuff, and you're one of these people there, and you're you now. You're not a young idiot. You're smart adult woman. And you want to steer. You know everything you know now, sort of, and you're like, I don't want this person to go down that path. So what do you do?
If I'm there in the early days and I don't know what I know now,
You see a
I
young Christian.
probably
You see a young Christian now, basically.
I would have been probably writing Chris. I probably would have been emailing Chris. I probably would have hidden the fact that I'm female. I probably would have stayed anonymous in that way, because I wouldn't have wanted Chris to immediately jump on the idea that I'm hitting on them, which is what Chris always did. They're a highly misogynistic person. But I probably would have been contacting them and trying to help. And I don't, knowing what I know now, it wouldn't have made a difference. I just would have ended up as one more email pasted on the quickie.
Okay, maybe that's the case with Chris, but that not everybody's the same. Like, so what if you do so let's say Chris just trusts you and you do become friends with Chris, then how is you're Johnny Scarlett and you're a streamer and you see someone getting abused and you like or not getting abused, you see someone becoming a lol cow, and you befriend them because you want to help them, then where does it go from there? How does that work? What do you tell them?
Well,
That's tough.
stay off the internet. You know, it's tough because I'm in this situation. I'm simultaneously reaching out to them on the internet to help, but I'm also going to be giving them the advice that the internet is not the fucking place to be. Like, and Chris probably wouldn't have even responded to me in a positive way because I would have said something like, "You can't handle the internet." But that was Chris's home at some point. Like that was their only interaction in a
Yeah.
in a meaningful way, you know?
I feel like I would have wanted to mentor Chris as a comic artist. That's
People
what
gave Chris
I know.
thousands upon thousands
And he
of
didn't.
dollars in an effort.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. But I mean, yeah, and Chris's situation sort of I think the more he like ignored like helpful advice, it just became like a feedback loop, and the only thing that got through was toxicity and stuff. And that's a cycle of its own, I believe. But
Yeah.
like just assuming that you bypass that cycle happening, and you're like genuinely like friends with him. Like what I would have wanted to do is mentor him as a comic artist, like just giving him advice and about that, and just telling him to focus on that. And
Hmm.
but that's what I'm saying now. But I don't know that's the right thing to do. But that's what I feel like would be better. But I don't know.
I At this point in my life, I know a Christian when I see them. I know someone who is not in a mental headspace, maturity wise, or mentally capable to handle the internet. And I unfortunately think that the best way, barring them admitting to something that you have to go to the police for, I think the best way to interact with those people is to not interact with them at all. I don't watch lolcows that I view as a Christian. I don't support them. I don't even support other people making content about them.
Okay.
I only watch people at this point in my life who are mentally capable yet still being horrific bad e-beggars. And it's because I think that at some point it's the morbid curiosity. It's I think at some point they're going to do something so crazy that I'm going to want to be there to see it, but I'm also going to want to see their downfall, and I'm going to want to see people like Shani for Christ get their kids taken away and shit like that. And I don't mean I want to see
I
it as
understand.
in I want kids to
I
be taken
understand.
away.
I understand. I understand.
Yeah.
I understand what you're talking about. This is normal human. I don't like it, but I understand, and I know I can relate to it.
Yeah.
But I do the same. But probably not as much as you. But I definitely do it. Like I'm not saying that like I'm better than you. It's just like it's not like a big part of my life, but I absolutely do that. Um,
Yeah.
uh, but like there's more than that kind of a law. Like there's different types of like people were telling me in my comments like, oh, what do you think about like there's certain like lol cows that like aren't like that bad, or they're not like they're not
Mm.
doing horrible things, and uh they're just getting along just fine. Um,
Hopeful about those people. Like I watch Amberlynn Reed content because I really think that someday she's gonna get it together. Like she's not a very mature person. But I want to see her get it together. I want to see her as a success story. She's considered a lol cow because I think the primary tie between all lol cows, no matter their personality type or what content they produce, is that they continue to put things on the internet no matter what anyone says. And I think that Amberlynn is eventually going to get her shit together. So I watch content about her because I want to see that success story happen.
yeah, well, I think that's a good thing in some way. In some ways, um, I think that you could say like someone in my comments said Britney Spears um, is like a lol cow.
Kind of at this point, yeah, and that's really unfortunate. Like She was just unsocialized for so long. She didn't even really get to see the advent of the beginning of the internet, because by then she was already, by 2008, I believe, she was already under her conservatorship. And she wasn't allowed to post anything. She wasn't allowed to hang out with anybody who wasn't a doctor or her immediate family member. And so I think Brittany acts weird on the internet because she doesn't know any other way to act.
I'm not even familiar with this, but uh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I would say Lizzo's a lol cow.
Lizzo?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I only see hateful, horrible things about Lizzo. I'm sure that Lizzo is good at dealing with it. But I see very hateful stuff, and also I see stuff like about like I mean in this way, like a lot of celebrities just are lol cows. Like with this, we just love
Tom
this.
Cruise.
Yeah, yes,
Tom Cruise,
yes,
would be a lol cow. Yeah.
yes. Like, but the thing I was had in my mind about Lizzo is like I heard like she like lost weight and then people were pissed about it. Like,
yeah,
that's a lol cow experience. You know what I mean? Like, that's
kind of. I mean, I think that the lines are getting blurred. I think that specifically, not with internet celebrities, not with streamers and stuff like that, but classical Hollywood celebrities and lolcows are very much getting intertwined because of the way they get treated. Not necessarily because of how they act, though. Like, Lizzo doesn't act like a lolcow. People just treat her like a person in a zoo because that's how they treat all Hollywood celebrities at this point.
mm-hmm.
And that's one of the primary things about a lolcow, is that they get treated like a thing in a zoo.
That's a good figure of speech.
Mm. Unfortunately, with Christian, you were allowed to poke the things in the zoo.
Yeah,
with
the
someone
thing.
like Lizzo, you can't really do that.
Yeah, even Britney Spears. Like, I'm not super familiar with the Britney Spears stuff, but you're referring to. But there's like the big lot of boundaries and distance there. But like with just like these random people online, and they just, yeah, I would say that it's like a baby getting thrown into the lions.
Yeah. It's weird because it's become the norm to just give unsolicited, mostly irrelevant, unabashed opinions about anyone and everything. And that is compounded by being young and anonymous. And so a lot of people by that standard get treated like lolcows. That doesn't mean they act like one, but a lot of people who are well known get treated like one. And I think that's a good message to put across too, is that, like, not only are you not as anonymous as you think you are, but there is so much hate on the internet already that, in my experience at the very least, it's actually really beneficial to be unabashedly positive and helpful. Like, that's part of the reason people watch my stream, is because I don't get into drama and I don't, have petty fights with people and shit like that. It's become one of my things that I am an example for how I want my chat to act and how I want the world to be. And I think eventually, like all other fads, being vitriolic on the internet will probably go out of fashion.
I hope so, but I don't know. I don't think it will. But I'm not like a doomer about it. I don't think it will. Just because it will. I think that it has to be. I think it's baked into the system. It's baked into Twitch. It's baked into Twitter. It's baked into Facebook. It's baked into every algorithm. And it's baked into almost the human brain, just outrage and these really strong emotions. The morbid curiosity is one of them, but like it's just, we all have it, and they want it to take advantage of it because they can't.
Well, being the village idiot has been an actual job since probably the beginning of human time. you know? I
Yeah.
would say when you look at algorithms, I always give the example of how malleable your individual internet algorithm is. I have purposefully done things to experiment with my algorithms. There is one thing in particular that I do not talk about in front of my telephone. It's an experiment that I've had going on for about 3 years now,
Mhm.
probably longer. I have a very large purchase that I want to make. And my experiment is that I'm not going to talk about it in front of my phone. I'm not going to look up any ads on it. And I am going to make this large purchase without ever getting an ad for that thing.
Yeah.
I have manipulated my Instagram algorithm on purpose. I haven't manipulated my Twitter algorithm on purpose. It's actually very easy as long as you are dogmatic with it.
I want to
And
talk to.
so,
Sorry, interrupting you. Yeah.
yeah, I was just going to finish up and say, like, even though morbid curiosity might be baked into the human psyche, just like any other base, nasty human opportunity to be gross, we can get around it with social evolution.
I think you might be crazy, but if you are, then I'm 100% just as crazy. I want to talk
Yeah.
to. So I was talking to Socrates TV about,
Yeah.
and I told him, oh, he told me basically we agreed if I ever think I'm becoming a conspiracy theorist about something, I'll talk to him. And this is it. This is one
Hmm.
that I'm on board with you, but it's fucking crazy. And if but like the talking in front of your phone thing absolutely happens. Like
Hmm.
you talk about like what was it? I don't know, like it just happened to me, like it happens to me all the fucking time. What was I recently talking shit that I talk about on stream I end up getting advertised for. um
Yes.
and it's just like really shocking to me. And people will gaslight you about this, and or they'll say that like it's like I remember in like school being told by very smart people that it's obviously and I was told by somebody who works in like someone that worked at Wayfair, and they worked in the division or the department or whatever that was aimed at like making spam emails target people more efficiently,
Hmm.
which they said was harrowing because the smartest people they ever met in their life do that shit. um,
Yeah.
but people will tell you that it's just coincidence and it's going to happen because of other things. But it doesn't feel that way.
Can I tell you, do you know how I am so sorry if anyone's devices go off because I say this name. Do you know how an Alexa works?
How?
An Alexa
I'm
is a
gonna I'm gonna
constant.
eat your fucking your brainwashing me into becoming more of an experiment.
Do it.
Yeah, okay. I'm
Do
gonna
it because this
listen.
is true. Electrical, I am friends with engineers and chemists and electrical engineers. Like I know this. Plus I've looked at the schematics of how this works. But an Alexa is a constant radiation that picks up fluctuations in the air, and it converts those via transformation into a series of electrical waves. At any given time, an Alexa is always scanning, looking for something that is the shape of the word Alexa.
Mhm.
But it is always scanning for that as long as the device is active and on.
Mhm.
It just starts interacting with you when it sees the shape of the word Alexa, like your Google, like on your phone. If you say the correct, I'm not going to say it because I don't want people's devices to go off, but if you say all right, Google, or something else, it activates. But it only activates because it was already scanning, listening for that shape of that word.
Yeah.
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 Fourier transform. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah. I've listened to people. I remember listening to a guy on like Joe Rogan talking about this. So he said that a Google Pixel is the worst as far as being a surveillance device, but Joe Rogan also has people that say other crazy stuff. I'm not sure. Yeah, I need to talk to someone and figure this out. I don't know.
Mm.
But I feel like you're right. But
Yeah, it's just naturally how they work. That's how a Fourier transform
no,
becomes
that's not what we're
data.
saying. Like we're saying, yeah, of course that. But then what you're really saying is that it's actually recording everything you're saying, and it's
Well, it's not
listening for
recording.
keywords, and maybe if it hears other keywords, then it's going to add that to its database of information for your
Mm-hmm.
advertising and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe like,
It's not a conspiracy theory. It's just technology.
yeah, well, if they do that, I don't think they would admit it.
Absolutely not. No, they make all sorts of excuses and say things like, "Well, it's not recording you." And that's a very precisely chosen phrase. It is not
Right.
recording you. No, it's not recording me. You probably can't go into my phone and look up, an exact transcript of things I've said in the last 10 minutes. But inputting the data and having other things reference that data later on is not a recording. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. We're deviating a little bit, but
No, that's okay. Um, I think that this is another reason that internet literacy and media and technology literacy is a huge thing that we are almost completely ignoring as a society that can actually be effective.
I resent this though. I resent this. I think that we need to not have to train people like with like college educations on how to effectively and safely navigate the internet. I think we just need to force these companies to not do this shit, so we don't have to like learn fucking all kinds of shit just so we can protect ourselves from them.
It's too late. It's already baked into the environment. Like the only thing that we as normal people can effectively change is our behavior.
I don't agree. I don't agree. I don't know.
I mean,
More people are gonna be suing Twitter and YouTube and stuff like that, and they're gonna win. And that's the beginning. I think that so the reason the first time I heard about like the first time I started thinking about age verification, there's two things: Tinder and OnlyFans. OnlyFans, if you want to make an account on OnlyFans, they make you go through a certain age verification technology that they scan your ID and you make you take multiple scans of your face. And
mhm.
this is like it's done in like an encrypted, very like temporary way, and it verifies you, and then it stores like no information. And this is a technology that exists that can be used in a lot of things. Tinder has this technology, and they refuse to roll this out in places unless like you were saying Louisiana, maybe they are going to be forced to do that there now. Maybe, I don't know, but
Hmm.
unless the state forces them to use this, they don't have it, and in most states they don't. So and that's like it's like fucked up. Like using Tinder, you should be able to assume that the people on there are over 18, and they have built. They don't even need to develop it anymore because they have it, the technology to verify your age, but they just don't roll it out because it would be bad for their bottom line.
Yeah, exactly. And they do roll it out, but only if you want to get verified, you know?
Yeah,
And not everybody gets verified on Tinder.
yeah. I haven't used it in a
And
while, so maybe yeah, but
and there's also this thing about like a lot of people try to hide their age. When I was on Tinder, I saw people all the time who would say things like they would come up as 27 And then in their bio at the very end, it's like, oh, by the way, I'm 20. I don't know why it's coming up as 27. Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't even say that. Sometimes they wait until they're in your inbox, you know? And I think Tinder is one of those places where you ought to be guaranteed that you're talking to a real person who is their real age. But so many people use it for affairs or for getting a third for their marriage partnership and stuff
Nothing
like
wrong with
that.
that.
And
Nothing wrong with
therefore,
that.
it would be no, there's nothing wrong with wanting a third,
Or an
but
affair. Like, I
you,
mean, I don't think that
I
Tinder
mean,
should stop people from having affairs. Well, yeah, but
no, I don't think that's Tinder's job.
yeah, I don't think it's Tinder's job. Yeah.
But imagine that you're an executive or you're some sort of high up in a company and you look for a third with your partner on Tinder, which is perfectly acceptable and somewhat normal. And then your company fires you because some of Tinder's emails get leaked and they find out what you were doing on Tinder. They can fire you for a legitimate reason, which is why did that woman get fired? What is that called? That woman who screwed all of the other cops in her
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
thing. Yeah, she can legally get fired for that because it's baked into their contract that they'll have some sort of I just forget the word is blanking on me, but it's like a respectability, it's a decorum and respectability policy. Yeah. You can be legally fired.
I think we should never have nobody should ever have to be respectable. We should. I think. I'm obviously hyperbole, but I think we should all have to like everybody in your life. You should have to like take a big whiff of their stinkiest shit, like every. Someone in my chat said something to contradict your theory about Alexa. They said that there would need to be a database of key phrases they were listening for, which would be gigantic if it was used for advertising.
Yeah, absolutely. It's names of companies are the primary ones, and names of different commodities from those companies. Yeah, and all of that already exists. Yeah. Those databases already exist. They're huge, but they exist.
Well, no. Okay, because what we're talking about is more than just a word with letters. We're talking about a much bigger packet of data revolving around what that shape of that word looks like in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's not just letters. That's more. This is like we're talking about like a difference between like a video and like as far as like file size and stuff, and we're talking about the difference. We're talking about like a big thing, like
yeah, and we're also talking about companies. We're talking about Apple and Google, the biggest technology companies in the world.
I know.
Like, and that's why it's not always effective, because with my accent, the shape of a word is different when I say it from when someone with no accent says it. So it's not always effective, and it doesn't always give me ads for certain commodities. But if I happen to say it in a way that it recognizes that shape, then
it's absolutely
it's gonna
possible.
work.
And I think it probably happens naively, but I definitely feel like it does. This person's now on a mission, though. Okay, so it needs to be able to verify that a key phrase has been spoken before it sends the data to a server. So the database needs to be in the database needs to be in the Alexa. Then they're continuing. It's been verified that Alexas are not constantly sending pings to servers to check everything you're saying. No,
they're not.
They check against an internal storage to check if you have said Alexa. I may be wrong, but I'm fairly sure is what this person said. So in that case, wait. In that case, then the thing that could be happening here is very like you said, like it could be just a very small selection of things like you're saying. Used car would maybe be one, or like a name of like a Amazon or something specific like that. Like there could be a list of 100. I don't know. It's possible. I don't know.
One thing that I want to point out that they're not really contradicting me when they say that, I used Alexa as a way to explain to you what the Fourier transform technology does. Alexa, yes, has been very much on the defense about the fact that they are not constantly pinging everything you say. And I completely agree with that. However, I use that as an example of the technology. They're listening for the word Alexa. What really does ping every few seconds is your cell phone.
Yeah.
And that's where you get most of the ads.
So I've heard, especially Google Pixel on Joe Rogan. So take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah. I mean, I like some of the stuff
I
that
love
Joe
Joe
Rogan
Rogan.
says, mostly because sometimes he has on really intelligent people, you know? I don't think
Yeah.
that he's the smartest guy in the world, but he knows how to pick a guess.
Yeah. Yeah. But I like Joe Rogan a lot. I just don't trust him to vet people is like the best. And I think that that's kind of understood. People talk shit about Joe Rogan, but I think it's just kind of understood. Like, it's okay, I think. That's my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Last thing is a FFT or fast Fourier transform is just data encryption or compression. You can look up your Google ad demographics. They know a lot about you without having to listen. Google knows I'm lower class tier. Yeah, if you have a YouTube channel, the analytics are fucking amazing.
Yeah.
It's so cool. There's a lot.
Yeah, fast Fourier transform. I'm not telling anything. I'm not saying anything that's a conspiracy theory. Like, I'm literally just saying how the technology recognizes a word. You know, I'm not trying to tell this person that they're wrong, but I'm just saying, like, if you have a technology that is constantly scanning for your voice, it is recognizing certain words that you say. That's just literally how the technology works. I don't know. I don't want to get pissy with the chatter about it or anything. um but I think that that's just a part of technology literacy, you know, learning how basic things like a touch screen or a voice recorder works. That's really important.
Sure.
And sometimes, and I've experienced this before, sometimes when you start to tell people how the literal electricity in their hand is working and recording things for you, they start to fight with you because it sounds like something dangerous or something ridiculous or something that's too good to be true. And it's
Well,
like,
this chatter
no.
said that they're not trying to contradict you. They're just saying
Oh,
that
for
the Alexa, like, yeah, they said I was just adding the to clarify to adding clarity to the things that would need to be the case for an Alexa or any device to surveil you and fish for ad phrases.
sure.
I've
Yeah, and
heard
I
that
agree with
the
them.
phones do this a lot more. They do. Phones definitely have a major chunk of their. I mean, definitely. I mean, I heard someone tell me this, so I'm pretty sure that phones you like if you disconnect your phone from the internet, it's going to use a lot less power because a
Mhm.
major chunk of it is doing all this shit in the background. And when I say this shit, it doesn't mean that it's all like advertising shit. It's just um, has a lot going on connecting and pinging to services one way or the
Yeah.
other.
Like a small portion of that, you know, is that people don't realize that turning off your Wi-Fi setting when you're not around Wi-Fi saves your phone battery. They don't realize that your phone is, in that sense, constantly scanning for a Wi-Fi setting,
I got a chatter
you
that
know?
I deeply agree with. What he said is, I don't need to know none of that. Modernity is based on fractured knowledge. And I agree. I don't want to have to learn all this shit. I think we should have these companies held to a standard that protects us, and we shouldn't have to like walking through the internet shouldn't be like walking through a minefield, you know?
Well, do you know how to do magic? Because there's a very famous, and are you comfortable with magic?
I might.
Because there's a very famous quote that says any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So
Yeah,
if you're happy with doing magic that you're not entirely sure how it works, then yeah, go ahead, you know?
yeah. Well, you're not gonna know everything about everything in your life, you know.
I mean, we didn't know a lot of shit about Christian. And just to wrap it back around, like,
Hmm.
you know, eventually all of this will come to light. Eventually, things like people possibly surveying you and advertisers and shit like that that came to light, and
Hmm.
the entire history of Chris came to light, and it wasn't until after something had gone horrifically wrong. That's usually what brings shit like this to light.
Yeah.
Kind of like you were saying, like some of these technologies aren't going to be controlled until enough people sue these companies.
You know what? Then I'm gonna be the one that goes wrong. Because if nobody else will throw themselves to the wolves, it's gonna be someone. All right, that's all I have to say.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
I'm gonna step on
I
every
mean,
single mine, every single.
you gotta fuck around to find out.
Yeah. All right. I think this is a good place to end the conversation.
Cool.
But and
Thank you so much.
this person that was talking to you about the technology. There was a couple of people, but the main one, he was saying that he's just interested in the technology because he's familiar. He said he's written APIs for natural speak recognition, so he's just nerding out.
Oh, cool. That's wonderful. I'm sorry. It came off
That's how
like
I
I was
was
fighting
reading
with
it.
them or something, but
Yeah.
it, I'm happy that you know what? Can I just say before we get off of here, I am so happy and excited that conversations like the one that we're having right now and ones that I have on stream attract smart people like that.
Hmm.
Like I have neuroscientists in my chat. I have people who study, you know, data technology in my chat all the fucking time. And it's so exciting because getting on Twitch, I thought it was going to be all like Nazis and people fucking around,
Yeah,
you know?
true. But you know
Not.
what? I want to attract stupid people, and I want to. I'm not going to say Nazis are stupid, and I want to attract them too. You know why? Because I want. I don't want the things. It's like if we're saying that this is a smart conversation, which I don't know that for sure. Maybe we're just stupid. I don't know if I can know, but but if we're saying that, then I want to also. I don't want to isolate myself from stupid people. You know.
Yeah, I think it's just all about the demographic that you want to take hold of. You know, if you control your demographic and you control it to have at least a few stupid people, that's probably smart on your part.
No, get a
Keeps
whole
things
bunch of.
interesting.
Someone tipped me out. Tipped me earlier. Like they told me because I was talking about this phenomenon I mentioned earlier because it's just something I'm pissed about in the past couple of days about like a not safe for work channel in a Discord that suddenly gets big or goes public and stuff. It just gets like it turns into like shit posting and memes.
Mhm.
Um, and I was describing these particular types of images and stuff to someone, and they said that they see those things in like incel servers, and
Hmm.
they just I don't know. I need to get talk to incels about this. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to be not active and not exactly a lurker, but I used to get on incel subreddits, especially before the main big two got banned in 2020.
Yeah.
And I wasn't just a lurker because occasionally if I saw someone who was really not doing well, I would reach out to them and I would send them a message on Reddit.
Huh.
Um, it was
Yeah.
partially because I was morbidly curious about the people who think that women on disability and on WIC ought to be given to incels in order to pay for their child subsidies.
Well, those are the
But
most
it was
extreme
also
for sure.
partially, I was looking out for suicidality is the other part of it. I was like, oh shit, if you have some hope, but you're really losing your hope, like I'm going to reach out to you. And eventually those two big subreddits got banned and the incels are not as big on Reddit anymore. So I
Yeah.
don't really do that anymore.
Well, Bubba says they don't need to surveil you. They know almost everything about you. And Blue Mario Media just said, to be honest, it's nice to see nice people commenting here. I don't know why Christian attract the worst people. Very true.
Yeah.
All right.
It's the ability to take advantage of somebody, and that's going to attract the worst people.
Yeah, that's
But
for
it's
sure.
also going to attract some people who are just curious.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you mind if I put this conversation on YouTube, by the way?
Not at all.
Cool, thank you.
You're welcome. Absolutely. All right. Any last words?
If anybody wants to follow me from your chat, my
Oh
name is
yeah.
Johnny Scarlett. That's spelled with 2 T's at the
I
end.
I
So
have
thank
all
you
your
guys.
I have all your links in my description. Johnny Scarlett on Twitter. Oh no, it's on Twitter. You're hold on.
On Twitter and Instagram, I'm Wicked They. Like that's been
Yeah.
my handle on other sites for a long time, but I just go by my name on here.
Yep. Hold on. I'm just gonna post it in my chat. Here's your Twitter because I just had it up. And
Are you Real Smith on Twitch?
yes,
Or are you just Smith?
Reels. I don't use Twitch. I'm Real Smith on YouTube. I stream on YouTube. My I might try streaming on Twitch and multi-streaming, but I just see YouTube is sort of better in general. I think Twitch is better for immediate short-term growth. I think YouTube is way better for long-term growth. Plus, every stream is basically the VOD is now a video.
Yeah.
And I like a lot of things. And I'll also like so say you're streaming on Twitch right now. There's a small chance just talking about controversial things that I randomly get banned on Twitch, and then that would mean I couldn't talk to Twitch streamers. So like,
Yeah.
so it's like if I never become a Twitch streamer, then but I don't know, maybe I'll change that.
Yeah.
All right.
I think it
you, Clark.
depends on the context, you know.
Yep, we got your Twitter and your Twitch in my chat.
Thank you so much. I love your mushroom lamp.
Oh, thank you. It's an extension cord, and 2 night lights.
That's so cute. Oh
Yeah.
no. Hell yeah. You guys, I put Smith in the chat. Please go follow him. This has been great, dude.
All right. Nice talking
All
to you.
right, I'll see you later.
See ya.
Bye.
All right. Let me check what the date is. On Friday at 8 p.m. EST, Friday the 27th, I will be speaking to Portland is Burning. He's a very passionate man, but I like some of the things he has to say. And we're going to be talking about raising kids. Because I have the controversial and stupid opinion, some might say, that raising kids is a lot better than having a job. And a lot of people disagree. And we're going to get to the bottom of it. He has kids, and he's going to put me in my place. Or maybe we'll find common ground. I don't know. Or maybe we'll just fight. But be there or be square. See you later. Title's misspelled? Oh, I'll have to fix that, whatever.